Gamers! Not used to seeing my face when I say that, are you? Well, there's a very good reason that I am fronting this video, and it's because we have a very big announcement. And in the spirit of that announcement, let's not bury the lead. For the past 17 months, we've been building an all-new ad-free, reader-funded website. It's called thisweekinvideogames.com. We have built it from the ground up to deliver a unique, throwback-inspired web experience before things like ads, SEO optimization, and AI slop ruined the traditional website model. We've staffed it with a number of full-time editorial staff and have plans to hire more soon. We've also signed on several contributing columnists who are experts in their field. We've been prototyping different versions of this site for over 12 months, and we soft-launched this version of the site to our patrons 2 months ago. We've put in the work to build something that we are proud of. We have tested it to make sure it works, and now we are very excited to officially announce it today. I'm going to explain the background to all of this now and give you a tour of the site, but before I do that, I want to make one thing super clear. Absolutely nothing changes on the YouTube channel as a result of this website. You can still expect the same reviews, previews, and podcasts as before. The weekly news show also remains completely unchanged, except it's actually going to be better now since we'll be able to do more of our own original reporting. I just wanted to make that really clear right up the front in case you thought that, 5 minutes into this video, I'd be announcing the cancellation of the news show or something like that. That's definitely not happening. You may be asking yourself, why would anyone be dumb enough to start a gaming website in 2025? And you know what? It's an excellent question, so let me explain. You would have seen dozens of gaming websites get shut down or consolidated over the past few years. There's really not that many left at this point, and the ones that are left are really struggling under a business model that incentivizes all the wrong things. It's all about SEO performance more than anything else, and the razor-thin margins that these websites are running at results in, the overwhelming number of banner ads and pop-up ads and video ads and sponsored articles and all the things that make many modern-day websites borderline unreadable. And now AI has come along and it's resulting in actual human writers being laid off in favor of ChatGPT written articles, and that is a trend that will only accelerate as AI bots will scrape more and more content from websites, surfacing it to people in search without those people actually needing to visit the website that generated that original content. So I looked at all that and I thought, that sucks. I think it should be different. I wanted a site that didn't have any ads. I wanted a site that didn't have any pop-up video players. I wanted a site that doesn't take any money from game publishers, either for sponsored articles or banner ads. I wanted a site that didn't do any referral link advertising disguised as product reviews. I wanted a site that didn't clickbait headlines in order to play the SEO game. I wanted a site that didn't have any ChatGPT written articles either now or ever. I will burn this website to the ground before I let a single AI written word ever appear on this domain. I wanted a site that treats its staff well and pays them properly. I wanted a site like that, and so I built it, and here it is. thisweekinvideogames.com. This site is really important to us for two reasons. Number one, it's designed as a direct response to many of the things we find frustrating about the modern web experience, and our homepage is the perfect example of that. Not only is it ad-free, but it's full of actual information rather than just links to articles. And what I mean by that is, homepages used to have actual stuff on them, used to be able to browse a homepage and get most of what you wanted. Modern web doesn't work like that, but our site does. And so just by scrolling it, you can see the top stories, you can see news in brief, you can see social media chatter, upcoming releases, a feed of major game announcements, a review roundup, plus an indie shout out. Obviously, there is more detail available if you do click on those things, but the information you want is right there. And we like to imagine that people might set thisweekinvideogames.com as one of their default browser tabs, or create a link to it on their mobile home screen so that you can open it up, do a quick scroll, and immediately get caught up on what's going on in the world of video games. The other reason this site is really important to us is that it allows us to do a lot more original reporting, which is actually something we've been doing behind the scenes for the better part of a year now. And this is probably a good segue to introduce the team behind this. So I'm the publisher of the site, but I will not be the person running it. I will be contributing through my reviews and previews, through a column I'll be doing, and through, some editorial support. But, my focus will remain on the YouTube channel. The site will be run by Edmund Tran, who's been helping to put together this very show for the past 18 months now. And before that, he had a 13-year career as one of Australia's most awarded games journalists. He's joined by our news reporter, Maddie Agnew. She's based in the UK and has a background in independent media. We've also got Stu and Austin, who'll be contributing to the site through reviews, previews, and op-eds. We're also very proud to welcome 3 contributors who are experts in their field, and they'll be providing regular monthly columns. Nathan Brown is a former editor of Edge magazine and currently publishes the Hit Points newsletter, which is one of my favorite reads each week for its humor, insight, and no bullshit commentary. Simon Carlis runs a Game Discover Co., one of the most subscribed newsletters across all of Substack, one that specializes in the actual hard data behind video game sales, discoverability, and more. An extremely respected voice in the game data analytics field. Daniel Robson is a former community manager at Sony's Japan studio back when that still existed, and then he went on to become IGN Japan's editor-in-chief for nearly a decade. He's still the executive producer of the site, but also does work in gaming, online retail, and publishing. He's going to be providing us an on-the-ground perspective of the game scene in Japan from a man who has worked in and covered that scene for nearly 2 decades. Finally, there's me. I'm going to be doing a regular column on there as well. It's just a space for me to write about whatever I feel like, stuff that doesn't really make sense to put into a YouTube video or a podcast discussion or whatever, just thought bubbly kind of stuff. And I'm personally really excited about that because I love writing and I like that I'll have a little space to do some of that now. So that's the pitch. And at this point you might be asking, what's the catch? Well, the very good news is that the vast majority of what we're going to put on this website is 100% free. All of our news and reviews and previews are all free. There's also a weekly newsletter we're providing tied to the weekly news show. And even if you are not a paid supporter, you are still never going to see a single ad across this entire website. In addition to that, we do have a supporter tier. And if you sign up, that gives you access to the full homepage experience with all of its dashboard-like convenience, an additional weekly newsletter featuring some exclusive content, all of our op-eds and columns, plus a version of the weekly news show that is 100% ad-free, playable in the YouTube player for your convenience. I want to be clear that there is no venture capital money behind this. There is no angel investor. There's no, partner company, no silent investor partner thing. There's no spin-off business model where we like sell your data or some shit. Like, this is literally just 100% funded by me. I put my own money on the line here because I really believe in this, and I think other people will believe in this as well. But between things like staffing and hosting and web dev costs, it does require support. And the good news is that we don't need 5 million readers a month like other websites who are reliant on Google ads and referral revenue. Let me put it this way. There's about 300,000 people who turn up to your average Skill Up video. If just 1% of those people became a supporter for this, we would have a very sustainable publication that can hire writers and pay them well, that can do original reporting, that can, go to a studio and play a thing, that can say whatever we like without fear that a sponsor or some corporate overlord would pull the rug from under us. It would just give us that ability to be truly independent and secure in the future of what we're building. If you feel like you might be one of those 1% of people who want to support something like this, we'd be eternally grateful. And if we could get to something like 2%, then we could really dare to dream pretty big about what we could do with a publication like this. So click the link below to check out thisweekinvideogames.com. Sign up for free. Become a supporter or benefactor if you'd like to help us towards our goals. No matter how much support you provide, we truly do appreciate it and look forward to giving you an update on how all this is going, because I'm really excited about it. We've been working on it for 18 months now, and it's really nice to get it in front of you. It's finally here. We hope you like it. Please give us your feedback. I'm sure you will. And with that, on with the rest of the video. Plenty of news to get to this week. The Subnautica drama is getting messy as hell. Destiny 2's latest expansion delivers a new record for day 1 player counts, and not the good type of record, mind you. Plus, we got a deep dive look at Ghosts of Yote. Spoiler alert, it's looking pretty good. But let's start with that Subnautica news now, because boy oh boy is there a lot going on here. We covered this a little last week, but here's a quick recap. Subnautica developer Unknown Worlds was acquired by Krafton a number of years ago. The purchase price for that studio was $500 million. But on top of that, Krafton also offered a $250 million bonus to the studio's co-founders if they were able to hit certain revenue targets by the end of 2025. We only know this because it was initially reported by Bloomberg and then confirmed by Krafton. So as unbelievable as those sums of money are, they're real. Anyway, for the last few years, the studio has been working on Subnautica 2, and it seemed to all be going well as they approached their planned 2025 release window for an early access launch. But all of a sudden, Krafton abruptly fired the studio's co-founders Charlie Cleveland and Max McGuire, as well as studio CEO Ted Gill. We didn't know why this happened until Bloomberg reported the news of that $250 million bonus promise, and so the speculation was that Krafton were trying to weasel their way out of that liability. And that may well still be true, don't get me wrong, but Krafton also have their own story to tell. They posted an official statement on the matter alleging that studio leadership just weren't doing their jobs. Quote, regrettably, the former leadership abandoned their responsibilities entrusted to them. Krafton believes that the absence of core leadership has resulted in repeated confusion in direction and significant delays in the overall project schedule. We are deeply disappointed by the former leadership's conduct, and above all, we feel a profound sense of betrayal by their failure to honor the trust placed in them by our fans, end quote. After this, there was a leaked document which showed the current state of Subnautica 2's current content offering as it headed towards its early access release. It's honestly hard to draw any definitive conclusions from this leak because video game content is more than what you could just put on a slide. but the slide basically argues that the planned early access content offering is less than what was initially planned, significantly so in fact, and as such, whoever put these slides together is recommending that the early access launch be delayed into 2026, which would have made it impossible for the founders to collect that $250 million bonus. For what it's worth, staff members were also promised 10% of that, and the founders have claimed that they plan to distribute some of their remaining $225 million to staff. Jesus Christ, that is a lot of money. These leaked slides were actually confirmed by Krafton themselves in a statement to various media outlets, saying, quote, "Given the circumstances, Krafton has determined that transparent communication is necessary and has chosen to confirm the authenticity of the document. Krafton believes that minimizing speculation and ensuring accurate communication with players must take precedence," end quote. That brings us to a new development just yesterday. The co-founders have indeed sued Krafton, and you can read their suit for yourself if you like, because it's public. They claim that Krafton did indeed sack them to avoid paying the earnout, as the upcoming Subnautica Mobile and Switch 2 ports were likely to do well, and Subnautica 2 has already got 2.5 million wishlists on Steam. Quote, "After Krafton's leaders reviewed Guild's projections and evaluated the anticipated revenue and earnout numbers, everything changed," end quote. The Bloomberg report had one interesting exchange to share, quote, "During one lunch meeting, according to the complaint, Krafton Chief Executive Officer Chang-Hung Kim told Cleveland that releasing the game in 2025 could be disastrous financially and hugely embarrassing for the company." Krafton later said that that had been a mistranslation, end quote. The complaint alleges that Krafton did not provide the necessary support to promote the title as it approaches early access launch, and at one point, Krafton asked the studio's leadership to accept a lower earnout bonus. Soon after that, the three studio leaders were fired. A really interesting detail here is Schreier's reporting around the actual current state of the game and how ready it might be for launch. The suit alleges that pre-release tests drew high marks, and Schreier's own discussions seem to back this up. Quote, "Developers at Unknown World speaking to Bloomberg said they believe the game was in good shape, as did some external parties who asked not to be identified. One developer at a separate company who played Subnautica 2 and requested anonymity because they signed a non-disclosure agreement told Bloomberg that they enjoyed the game and that it seemed way more robust than other titles in early access," end quote. The only other thing to note is that just today, Krafton announced that the $25 million bonus that was on the table for staff, that offer is being extended until the end of 2026, but the remaining $225 million promised to the co-founders is obviously the whole point of the upcoming lawsuit. So look, these are the facts insofar as the parties have alleged them, but the truth is, we don't really know what has happened here. It's one of those he said, she said situations, and until we get a better view of the facts, it's going to be very risky to say who's truly at fault here. Those facts will no doubt come as this lawsuit progresses, if indeed it does progress at all, since Krafton may wish to settle this out of court. We'll definitely keep you posted on what has turned out to be one of the most dramatic and unexpected news stories of 2025, and I never would have guessed that it'd center on a little game like Subnautica. That's crazy. Changing tack now, and let's take a look at how things are going with Destiny, since it just got a new expansion titled Edge of Fate. These expansions are, of course, a very big deal for a game like Destiny. You're naturally going to see a lot of player drop-offs throughout the year, and these expansions are the moments to bring players back. And that formula has served Bungie really well since forever, really. I mean, the last 3 Destiny expansions have pushed the concurrent player counts from lows of like 60 to 70,000 players up to around 300,000 players. Even Lightfall delivered those numbers, and that is remembered as one of the weakest expansions that Bungie have ever rolled out. So that 300,000 figure is kind of the benchmark. How is Edge of Fate doing against that measure? Not well. Not well at all, sadly. In a rather staggering result, Edge of Fate peaked at just 99,000 concurrent players on Steam, roughly a third of the typical day 1 concurrent player counts the Destiny expansions deliver. Already the player drop-off is beginning, with the expansion losing 10,000 concurrent players on day 2, but the weekend is of course a time when more people play, so it's possible those numbers rebound a little. But even in the absolute best case scenario, there is no way those numbers get back up over 100k. That's just not happening. Impossible to see these figures as anything other than a devastating blow to the franchise. The final shape was a really brilliant finale to a 10-year story arc, and there were big question marks about whether or not the final part of that expansion's title might prove to be a little prophetic. Sure enough, just after the expansion was shipped, Bungie leadership effected sweeping layoffs that would profoundly affect the Destiny team, hinting at a reduced capacity to service the game or deliver ambitious content offerings in future. Early reports indicate that the limitations imposed on the Destiny team have made themselves felt here in Edge of Fate. Steam reviews and general chatter point to a fairly strong narrative through line, but a fairly weak playable campaign experience, reliant on a Metroid-style ball mechanic that people got really tired of really fast. There's also a lack of new exotic gear, and changes to the build crafting system have not gone over well. No critic reviews for this one yet, as it's still too early, but on Steam the expansion currently sits at a mixed 52%, with many reviewers saying that while it isn't the worst expansion Bungie has put out, it certainly isn't meeting expectations. I'm yet to jump into this one as I'm still finishing off Donkey Kong Bonanza, but I do plan to play through the campaign campaign just to see it. The thing is though, that 99,000 concurrent player figure, that is not remotely surprising to me, because I'm gonna guess that many Destiny fans are where I'm at now, which is that we played Destiny for 10 years and we had a great finale in the final shape, and we're done now. We're open to Destiny 3 or something equivalent to it, something that really looks to deliver us something truly new. But short of that, many of us are feeling like we've had our fill of this version of Destiny. I do feel bad for Bungie because that's an incredible hurdle for them to have to clear, but it's also just a reality. And as I've said many times before, my hope is that Sony double down on Destiny, because I think this franchise still has a bright future, but only if Sony are willing to be truly ambitious with it. Speaking of Sony, they just did a state of play centered squarely on one game, Ghosts of Yotei, the samurai adjacent open world action game that's a sequel to the excellent Ghost of Tsushima. The showcase was honestly very impressive, or at least I thought it was. I know not everyone loved Ghost of Tsushima. I know some people found it a little derivative, a little too open worldy, but personally, I loved it. I felt like it had just the right mix of accessible open world action without too much bloat, and the combat was great, and the minigame stuff was cool, and you got to see Jin's butt. Love that. The sequel is looking just as strong. Visually, it's already a straight 10 out of 10 with the color and sweeping planes and the wind, and the inclusion of a new Takashi Miike mode that results in more mud and blood splatter. You can hear a new main theme coming through in the soundtrack, and it too sounds fantastic. And there's also a new lo-fi mode made in collaboration with Shinichiro Watanabe of Samurai Champloo fame, so you can literally just roll around the Yotei countryside listening to original lo-fi tracks while murdering bandits. The story is that you're trying to get revenge on a group known as the Yotei Six, which is very Kurosawa / spaghetti western inspired. We actually interviewed the game's creative directors on this week's episode of the Friends Per Second podcast, and we asked them if this objective, which is very similar to that of Assassin's Creed Shadows, would mean that we could tackle the Yotei Six in any order. Thankfully, they told us no. They said that the story has a definitive beginning, middle, and end, and as such, you will kill these targets in a specific order. That made me very happy because I think Ubisoft's freeform, choose-your-own-adventure approach to storytelling almost always sacrifices good storytelling in favor of gameplay freedom, and that trade-off just isn't worth it. Anyway, it was a great chat, and if you want to see the full thing, it'll go up on the channel and on RSS feeds over the weekend. As the Japanese say, please look forward to it. A quick lightning round to finish off. Developers at King, makers of games like Candy Crush and Bubble Witch Saga, claim that AI tools are replacing them. MobileGamer.com spoke to a number of developers who work at the studio, and they say that people who work to create AI tools will be laid off, with their workloads being allocated to the very AI tools that those staff members created. Quote, "Most of level design has been wiped, which is crazy since they spent months building tools to craft levels quicker. Now those AI tools are basically replacing the teams," end quote. Yeah, honestly, I feel like that's going to be happening fairly frequently over the next few years, so do expect plenty of more stories like this, sadly. Nintendo is surveying users about their recently released game key cards. These are physical cartridges that only really act as a sort of digital license, unlocking access to a digitally downloaded version of the game. Nintendo is asking Japanese gamers whether or not these cartridges affect their purchasing decisions, and hopefully these people respond in the affirmative, because physical media is already on the way out, and we really don't need a company as large and as influential as Nintendo accelerating that trend. Speaking of which, the European video games industry body has responded to the Stop Killing Games initiative and declared it, quote, "prohibitively expensive," end quote. Well, you know what else is prohibitively expensive? Spending your hard-earned money on something only for it to be yanked away from you when a publisher shuts down a game's servers. These companies are more than happy to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on live service bets that almost always go belly up, but when you ask them to allocate a portion of that development cost to ensure that the game remains playable if and when it flops, it's suddenly prohibitively expensive. Yeah, right. And finally, pivoting back to Nintendo for a second, it looks like we're getting a Donkey Kong movie at some point in the future. Universal and Nintendo have teamed up yet again and registered a copyright for a Donkey Kong related film, but literally no other details are known at this point. Whatever ends up happening, I really hope they don't invite Seth Rogen back to do the voice of Donkey Kong. I got nothing against the guy, but man, he put absolutely no effort into the voice of Donkey Kong in the Mario movie, and I think DK deserves a hell of a lot better than that, especially given how good Bonanza is, but we'll talk more about that later. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, let's start with this week's biggest disappointment. Look, I'm sure when they pitched Resident Evil, but it's a mobile strategy game, none of us had the highest of hopes. So maybe this is actually exactly what people expected. Developers Joy City and Aniplex held their reveal showcase for Resident Evil Survival Unit, and it's a free-to-play management and strategy game set in a parallel universe where all your favorite Resident Evil characters are alive and well and living in a big mansion together like a happy group of housemates. It offers some base management gameplay, defensive tactical battles with some real-time elements, and just about every Resident Evil character you could possibly name, including the all-time great Barry Burton. His corpse revived to try to get you to install this thing. This one is launching sometime in 2025 for iOS and Android. I will not be there day one. or any day after that. Another former Xbox console exclusive is breaking down the fence this week. GSC Game World announced that Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl is coming to PS5 later in 2025, which should be a good amount of time since launch to jump back into this thing or jump into it for the first time to see how it's evolved since its very, very rocky launch state. There was some reporting a while back saying Xbox only had a 3 months exclusivity window for this one, but it's likely GSC were keen to fix the game and make the most of their second launch chance. All the best to the team, hope it really goes large. A new Switch 2 game was announced this week. Japanese developer Inti Creates announced a new 2D combat platformer last week called Majogami, which is being released for the Switch 1 and 2 on October 30th of this year, with a PC release to come sometime later. The studio was founded by former Capcom staff who have made a bunch of things over the years, including the very good Bloodstained spin-off Curse of the Moon and Azure Strike Gunvolt, as well as a few more questionable titles like Galgun. You know, the rail shooter where you shoot schoolgirls with pheromone arrows. And Stu, please make sure all of this B-roll is blurred out so we don't get demonetized. Thank you very much. Quite a few release date announcements filtered through this week. Warhammer 40k Dawn of War Definitive Edition is the remastered edition of the real-time strategy game that we wish they were making a sequel for, but they're not. They announced this one at the Skull Showcase about a month ago, and now it's got a release date of August 14th for PC only. Heartworm is another one of those throwback survival horror games that we absolutely need more of. This one mixes that PlayStation 1 style with both fixed camera angles and over-the-shoulder third-person perspectives, and it's got a release date of July 31st for PC. I actually took a look at this one a little while ago. You play an amateur photographer called Sam who's mourning the death of her grandfather, and after spending far too much time on the internet, begins following internet rumors about a way to get in touch with the afterlife. Really cool looking, grimy VHS aesthetic for this one. Great vibe. There's a free demo on Steam if you're curious about it. Let's get a bit more wholesome now. Playables is a game-making outfit from Switzerland known for, I guess you could say, arty video games. A few years ago at Day of the Devs, they announced a game called Time Flies, and it's a game about, quote, our limited time in this world, end quote. Get this, you play as a fly who only lives for like a minute or two at most, with the average life expectancy of your country of residence serving as the number of seconds you get to live. Then you have to try to complete a Hitman-style checklist of challenges before your time is up, with plenty of secrets to discover along the way. It's got more you died screens than Dark Souls, and it's coming out on July 31st for PC, Switch, and PS5. And since we started with a mobile strategy game, we may as well end with one. Wargroove is that turn-based strategy game that is carrying the spirit of Nintendo's Advance Wars series and applying it to a new fantasy and pirate-themed world. So it looks like they're going to see whether or not launching it on mobile can help. So a pocket edition of Wargroove 2 will launch on iOS and Android on July 30th. Some cancellation news now. Wargaming's Steel Hunters. Remember this one? It was announced that last year's Game Awards launched on Steam Early Access in April 2025, and honestly, it looked pretty cool. Michael Bay's Transformers, except a competitive multiplayer game. What's not to love, right? Well, apparently not enough people agreed with that, because after just 3 months of free-to-play early access, Wargaming have announced that they are sunsetting the title in another 3 months. Oof. Not quite Concord levels there, but still, that's gotta suck for the team behind it. Admittedly, I never jumped into this one since the year's been so stacked, but the Steam reviews point to a repetitive loop and a lack of game modes as some of the issues. On top of the whole free-to-play currency problem, which plagues so many games, it only peaked at around 4,500 concurrent players on launch day, but quickly declined to just a few hundred weeks after that. Wargaming has said they're going to throw all of its unreleased content into the game as a final send-off. One delisting announcement this week too. John Wick Hex was a pretty interesting adaptation of the action movie franchise, imagined as a turn-based tactics game where you chain together actions to replicate Keanu Reeves' quick thinking. It was developed by indie outfit Bithell Games, and it was put out by Good Shepherd, who are now under Devolver Digital. Sadly, a licensing deal or something must have expired because the game has now been pulled from all PC and console storefronts with no indication of whether or not it might be coming back. You can still download it if you ever bought it, but no new purchases can be made. Some people absolutely loved it, others were quite down on it, but a swing like this is a pretty cool way to do a film adaptation if you ask me. So what came out last week? Well, let's stay with Steam Early Access a little bit longer and take a look at Devolver's Mycopunk. This is the game that kind of looks like Borderlands with less Randy Pitchford, God bless. At the time of writing, it has a very positive sentiment on Steam. Only about 650 reviews so far, but 93% of them are positive. Here's Steam user Armani, who had this to say, quote, "It's a huge amount of Deep Rock Galactic with the frantic non-stop madness of Helldivers and Risk of Rain mixed in. Every run, I feel like I'm earning a little towards the next cool thing, and if they keep building on this, we could have more classes, more guns. Honestly, the sky is literally the limit. The foundation of the game is rock solid, and I'm excited to see what other content comes along to keep adding variety and spice," end quote. Next up is EA Sports College Football 26. As expected, very few critics have actually touched on this one at this point. Just 4 reviews on OpenCritic at the time of writing, but it does hold a mighty 85 regardless. There are a few reviews in progress floating around, but Games Radar reckon they've played enough of this to score it 4.5 out of 5, saying that the game's new rivalry system is a game changer for sports games. Quote, "No sim has ever properly nailed the intensity and atmosphere of a heated derby until now. College Football 26 goes hard on the passion and desire of local pride, focusing on the pool of bragging rights and authentic trophies. For the most part, it's exceptional. When did you last really care about losing an exhibition match to the CPU in Madden 25 or EAFC 25? In College Football 26, even casual results matter. There is meaning in every result, genuine joy over every victory, and blustering fury over every defeat. I launched my controller across the room after a late interception cost me a Navy win against Maryland. At stake was a silver bowl of crabs," end quote. Quite an endorsement there. Ericsholm: The Stolen Dream is that nice-looking cinematic stealth game set in 1900 Scandinavia. It's sitting at a strong 79 on OpenCritic at the time of writing, with quite the spread of scores. There's a lot of praise for its storytelling, but as it turns out, its stealth is a bit more prescriptive rather than freeform, more Hitman Go than Commandos. Here's PC Gamer, who gave it a 77, quote, "Every encounter feels fine-tuned to foil any attempt at outside-the-box thinking, or cheesing admittedly. Tightly honed patrol patterns mean you can't quite get bodies into cover before being spotted by a guard who spins around at the last nanosecond before you're safe. These limitations meant that while I enjoyed my time with Ericsholm, only the performances and presentation ever felt truly great. The actual playing of it never transcended a hobbled sort of good. Some interesting ideas and tight encounter design that never relaxed their grip on the player enough to feel properly special," end quote. Now let's check in with Kaizen: A Factory Story, the production line game we featured on our Radar segment last week. Just a few reviews for this one out at the moment, but they all broadly hit the same mark. Kaizen is sitting at a strong 83 on OpenCritic, with nothing but good things to say about this engineering puzzler. Slant gave this one 4 out of 5 and said, quote, "The real masterstroke of Kaizen is how seamlessly it eases you into its complexities without becoming punishing or overwhelming. The pursuit of efficiency is entirely up to you. The game only determines whether you've assembled a complete product, casting no judgment on what your solutions look like. Even the wraparound story slyly keeps your options open. As an American who comes overseas to work in marketing yet found himself planning assembly lines, you're specifically written as an unfamiliar outsider who's coming up with unorthodox solutions. Much like all the products you assemble, the disparate components of Kaizen all come together into one elegant whole," end quote. And finally, that Neverwinter Nights 2 re-release from Aspyr does not seem to be going down all that well at the time of writing. Right now, it's sitting at a mixed user sentiment on Steam, with about 50% of those reviews being positive. Now, this release brought the game to a lot of new platforms, but the early reviews on Steam are basically saying that there doesn't seem to be as many meaningful quality of life additions to make it worthwhile if you already own a version of it, like the one on GOG, and the UI changes don't really have many fans either. If you haven't already played this one and you're looking to do so, you may want to check into other options first. All right, coming back to the present now, what's coming out this week? Well, let's start with the big boy. Donkey Kong Bonanza is giving you a second reason to pick up that new Nintendo console, which you probably already spent way too much money on, and honestly, it's a good reason. I am playing through this one right now in preparation for a review, which should be up very soon, but I won't be coy. I absolutely love this. I think it totally rocks. It's exactly the sort of platforming experience I love, combined with a bunch of stuff that I never knew I wanted. It's not perfect, and I wish it went a little further with how it uses some of the destruction mechanics, but it's still really, really fun, and I think people are going to love it. Bonanza comes out on July 17th for Switch 2 only, naturally. Another one coming out on the 17th is Fretless, that music-based RPG we featured on our Radar segment some weeks back. The big thing here is its active turn-based combat system, which people are all about these days, to the point of harassing Square Enix to go back to turn-based combat with Final Fantasy. People, please, leave Yoshi P alone. He just wants to play Echoes of Wisdom on his Switch in peace, apparently. PC only for Fretless. Also on the 17th, from Powerhoof, the Australian developers behind Crawl, comes The Drifter, a gritty and pulpy point-and-click adventure game with an impressive pixel art style and slick animation. It revolves around a drifter who comes back to life after being murdered and tries to uncover the who's and whys of the mystery that may or may not involve some supernatural shit. I've heard some really good things about this one from people who have played it, and the team here is really looking forward to this one, so keep an eye on it if it's at all your jam. PC only for this one too. Here's one I'm especially looking forward to: RoboCop Rogue City Unfinished Business. It's the standalone DLC expansion to Nakon's surprisingly good adaptation of RoboCop from a couple of years back now. We've talked about this one quite a bit lately, but the gist of it is that you're storming up a skyscraper taken over by terrorists in a setup that should ideally take the best parts of films that use the same concept, like Judge Dredd or The Raid. This one's coming to PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles. Just one more for the 17th, and it's Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition. At this point, you're probably thinking, wait, what? That's already out on every platform. Well, we got news for you, buddy. It's coming to Mac this week. Apple's latest attempt to get people saying, hey, I guess you can play AAA games on a Mac now. CD Projekt Red reckons this one is playable on basically any Apple computer that's been released in the last 5 years, and the Mac version apparently has specific optimized settings for every model, including Mac Minis and MacBook Airs, which is pretty cool. That's like 15 different specs. Must have been a lot of work for CD Projekt Red to put all that together. Moving on to Friday, July 18th, the Namco is releasing Shadow Labyrinth, which you may know is that gritty Pac-Man reboot, and no, I'm not joking. From what I'm guessing, some developers at Namco really wanted to make a 2D Metroidvania, and Namco executives then said, what about leveraging our valuable IP? And then this happened. Very curious to see how this one turns out. It's releasing on all platforms. Jumping over to next week, Monday, July 21st, is seeing the release of a very intriguing strategy game from Tiny Build called The King is Watching. This is a roguelike management game where the unique twist is that your subjects and followers only work when you're actively watching them or mousing over them, meaning you need to micromanage your cities and armies by hovering over them like an unwanted David Brent in The Office. Weird concept, but there's a demo on Steam if you'd like to understand how it all works. PC only for this one. On Tuesday, July 22nd, we've got a couple of big buzzy games launching on PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles. The first is Abiotic Factor, which is a survival crafting game from Kiwi developer Deep Field, which is launching into 1.0 along with its console release. Alongside that, we've got Wildgate, which is the very exciting new spacefaring team shooter from Moonshot and Dreamhaven, which Austin actually previewed a little while ago and said that it was really capturing that old school Blizzard magic. Love that. And last one for the week ahead is Wheel World, which is the new one from Annapurna Interactive and Messoff, who you may know as the developers of that fencing game Nidhogg. This one is an open world cycling game where you explore and race through environments picturesque and supernatural, all in service of building your busted bike back up and appeasing the ghosts that haunt you in order to ride to bike heaven, or something like that. It looks pretty cool. Wednesday, July 23rd for PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles. All right, we just talked about heaven. How about some hell? Put this on your radar.
Nossa terra há de parar de queimar hoje. É uma chance de reescrever a história pelas mãos do povo.
This is Hellclock, a new roguelike action RPG that's been born in the wake of Hades, but the X-factor with this one is its unique setting. It's a dark fantasy twist on a Brazilian historical event called the War of Canudos, which I'm definitely mispronouncing. It happened in the late 19th century and saw thousands of people resisting the Republic of Brazil. You play a man avenging his fallen mentor and battle through hordes of the undead, naturally. It's a little bit Western, a little bit Hellboy, and it certainly got our attention with its setup and strong sense of style. This one's coming out on July 22nd for PC. There's a free demo for this one right now if you like the look of it. And if you do want to check it out, we've left a link to it over on our Steam creator page, which also has links to all of the other Put This on Your Radar stuff we've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and on the Epic Store, you still have time to grab Figment 2 and Skyracket, but next week, Epic have got a killer freebie, Civilization 6 Platinum Edition. This is Civ 6 complete with 2 of its expansion packs, including the game-changing Gathering Storm, as well as a bunch of leader and scenario packs, including the all-important Australian one. For those who haven't yet taken the dive into this one and are still waiting for Civ 7 to get good, this one might just tide you over. Over on PS Plus, they announced the new additions to the July catalog, which include the aforementioned Abiotic Factor, Banisher's Ghost of New Eden, Cyberpunk 2077, Planet Zoo, Risk of Rain 2, and the all-important Bluey video game. Sadly, it's not very good though, a bit of a bummer. Also of note is that in certain regions of the world, PlayStation is trialing rolling out these games gradually rather than all at once. That's currently in effect in Australia, Mexico, and Singapore. A very interesting move that definitely brings the service much more in line with something like Game Pass. And speaking of Game Pass, Xbox just announced Wave 2 for July. You can expect to see High on Life come back into the mix, joined by RoboCop, Rogue City, Abiotic Factor, and Wheel World. There's also a puppet-themed horror game called My Friendly Neighborhood, and later in the month, Chinese Souls-like Wu-Chang Fallen Feathers is hitting the service, as well as Grounded 2, which launches into early access at the end of the month. Our feel-good story for the week is one of my favorite feel-good categories, old people doing cool video game shit. Deserto was the first to spot this story. There's a company in Japan called Care Esports, and they host 2 esports events each year, complete with shoutcasters and live broadcasts, but there is one twist. They host these events in aged care facilities, giving the elderly a shot at esports greatness, even if they were born like 60 years before video games were even invented. This year, Tekken 8 was the game on which this battle of geriatric giants would be fought, and the combatants range from a 67-year-old all the way up to a person aged 93. What an absolute legend. In the end, the 73-year-old Yoshi Murabi took home the crown after a narrow victory while playing Panda. Will they go on to compete at EVO next year? Honestly, I think Sony should look into it, because if you opened up a seniors bracket, I think it would go super hard on Twitch and would unironically attract a bigger crowd than the main draw. I don't even watch fighting games, but I'd 100% tune in for that. All right, ladies and gents, that was a big show fronted by a big announcement. It was really good to finally get that out there after 18 months of working on it. I know the team are very excited to be finally kicking this off for real, and we sure would love it if you'd head over to thisweekinvideogames.com, sign up for free to get access to the news, reviews, previews, and weekly newsletter, and if you're feeling inclined, maybe even get on that supported tier for full access to the site's features, including our editorial pieces, expert columns, bonus newsletter, and an ad-free version of this very show. We're actually running a promotion during the launch window. If you do sign up as a supporter now, you'll become a founder, and your subscription price will be locked in forever. And when we say forever, we mean forever. I've been on YouTube for 10 years now, and I'd love to keep doing it for many, many more. I'd like to imagine that this site and this channel keeps on keeping on. So we hope you'll join us for what we hope will be a very long and fulfilling journey. I want to finish by saying a huge thank you to everyone for your support. We wouldn't be able to do stuff like this were it not for all of you tuning in each week, dropping likes, leaving comments. The team and I really do appreciate it, and we feel very lucky that we get to do what we do, and we never forget that it's thanks to you. So, huge thank you again. Have a great week, and hopefully we'll catch you over at thisweekinvideogames.com or in the next video. See you then. Bye-bye.